Okay, good, I guess it's still good morning still. I am, again, honored to be part of another august panel. This is where the real money is made. I mean, enough about gaming, enough about mobile advertising, enough about consumer services that don't actually have any revenue models. The enterprise players are the ones where have actually built real businesses leveraging the mobile trend as a way to accelerate their businesses. Why don't we first start out with Milind in 20 seconds-ish. Who are you? What does your company do? And then we'll get into it.
Sure. Founder CEO of CloudOn. We're a mobile productivity solution to enable users to create, review, annotate the documents, spreadsheets, presentations on any of their mobile devices. So it's a purely mobile-only play.
Thank you. Alex?
So I'm a 4-time entrepreneur. My most recent company was Assistly. It was acquired by Salesforce 2 years ago, and now I run all of our service solutions.
I'm Sam Lawrence. I'm the CEO of CrushPath, and we've got a sales and marketing solution that anybody can use. So it's small, medium-sized business, actually.
And since your last company went public, you should speak about that briefly.
Formerly, I was CMO at Jedi Software.
Hi, Mikkel, Svane, CEO and one of the founders of Zendesk. We are a customer service platform for more than 30,000 companies out there. My funny accent and name is because I'm Danish. I'm new to Silicon Valley, so happy to be here.
You can only use that excuse for a few more months. How long has it been?
This September will be 4 years.
Yeah, I think that's over now.
I'm still a guest.
All right, so first question. Other than Milind, the rest of you do not start with mobile as your primary modality. You start off generally with desktop experiences. I would be just curious to ask the three of you to start with, what is the snapshot today of how you think about mobile engagement versus desktop, and how quickly is it changing? And our guest from, a guest will speak first, who's not only been here 3.5 years from Denmark.
So we launched Zendesk in October 2007, and that was a Web 2.0-ish dream coming through, like let's build this customer service app as a Web 2.0 application. That was a term we used back then, Web 2.0, great trend. And it wasn't until 2009, 2010 that we really became serious about mobile. And that's also because there wasn't a really serious mobile game until then. So we started out with the iPhone platform, building a native app, a full-featured customer service rep application. And then we rolled that out to the other platforms. So we now have platforms for Android, for BlackBerry, for Windows Phone.
All native or using
all native apps. And I have some stats about users and so on I can give a little later. But we have a lot of users and we have a lot of interesting data.
But if you took the snapshot today, like as you think about your engagement, like roughly, what's the split of desktop versus mobile?
Oh, it's definitely like the vast majority is still desktop, but it's more than half, almost 60% of the customer service reps that are using Zendesk, and we are talking about a few 100,000 people here, they are also using a native app. So they use that in conjunction with the desktop experience.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Sam, we'll come to you next, please.
Yeah, we started actually as a mobile app, and at the very last minute switched over. Once we started talking to people at work and started looking, we kind of got bit by the bug of like, hey, look at all this really cool stuff you can do in mobile, and then had to take a reality check when you really get out there and look at people at work and how they're accessing information and working. So we backed off that and then started just thinking about it across platforms. And today about 15–20% are accessing from their mobile devices, and that's increasing pretty substantially for us.
So what would have been like 3 months ago or 6 months ago if you were to do a timestamp?
Probably from 15–20% as people are starting to get used to working in CrushPath, they're keeping up to date, checking, sharing, and using the app as they're moving out of the office.
Are you still current on the Jive statistics at this point? Do you know roughly? Put that away. Fair enough. Alex, when I come to you, please.
Yeah, I would say that clearly mobile is really important to Salesforce, and an increasing number of our customers, and actually something that we haven't talked about quite yet, but our customers' customers who are accessing our products and services are now coming through a variety of mobile devices. The thing that I would say is that, by evidence of, if you just look at the audience, we're at a mobile conference, but PCs aren't dead. People are still using PCs. A large percentage of our usage continues to be
Macintoshes in this crowd.
Personal computer, when I say PC. So Macs, yes, absolutely. And so, what I would say is the way that we think about it, and by the way, today, about 20% of enterprise applications are both PC and mobile, and Gartner is forecasting it'll be 90% by 2017. So clearly, the momentum is heading there. But when we think about it, we don't think about taking the PC or desktop experience and porting it to a tablet and then porting it to a mobile device. We actually think about each device, then the context, the use case, and how you create a micro moment experience to leverage that particular device. So when we think about phones, for example, to talk about micro moments, you have about 20 micro moments a day that average about 1.5 minutes each. And so we're thinking about not how do we take all those, like I said, desktop features to that, but how do we, in that micro moment, enable you to create really great content and consume really great content. So that's how we think about, kind of the whole stack. It's a multiple screen world.
Yeah. May I just ask a follow-up question related to this comment of create versus consume, which is, do you find, it seems sort of intuitive that maybe people create on a QWERTY keyboard in a desktop setting and consume on a mobile device? Is that necessarily true? Is that maybe just I'm old and I don't create as quickly on a mobile device? Or are you seeing that split as I'm hypothesizing?
Yeah, I would say that, again, it goes back to context and the use case. So if you think about some consumer apps, Instagram, Uber, all these other things, a lot of them are around consumption, but they're also around creation, right? And so when we think about enterprise apps, it's the same thing. It's rooted first in consumption, but then it's how do you participate, how do you collaborate, how do you create a bit of content in a very quick way to add to the conversation. And so for us, it's both.
Milind, why don't we come to you just to ask, you can answer any one of the previous questions, but if I could just frame it as, so you started mobile first.
Right.
And but I'd be curious to get from your perspective, sort of tablet versus smartphone, and what flavors of smartphone from a consumption perspective.
So as a product, we're very much about creating, editing, consuming content, right? And for us, content could be any form of Office files. And so currently, we are available on iOS tablets, Android tablets, iOS phones, Android phones. We do have a browser version coming out fairly soon. So we do see the importance of the browser, but we've approached it very much from mobile first, because I think the discipline of designing a product for mobile first is the right way to approach it, even when you look at a web app. Today, if you look at, we have about 1 million monthly actives, so growth has been phenomenal. And as we look at our engagement, about 60% is consumption, 30% is editing, and about 10% is brand new creation. Now, what's been interesting and kind of completely non-intuitive for us was the metrics on the iPad and the iPhone are virtually identical. So people are actually using iPhones to create content. And we've seen tweets, we've seen people write, who've written,
like text documents,
actually created a brand new full document on the iPhone. So it might be a different, clearly it's not me, right? Like I would tend to do most of my heavy lifting on either on a Mac or on the iPad. But there is a whole new generation of kids who've grown up with mobile devices who really do not even have PCs, right? So for them, maybe it's their small fingers, the dexterity, not an issue at all. So we definitely see that creation and editing is an important factor in mobile.
Why don't we just slide to the topic of privacy and security, right? This is a topic that's been in the press a little bit this last few months. Snowden topics, the hacking attacks that have written about fairly broadly. So, obviously there's a new perimeter being established. We're all believers that these mobile devices in the hands of workers way out at the edge of the network improve productivity, but at the same time it exposes potentially some sensitive data that's contained in each of your applications. So how do you think about how to draw that line between privacy/security/productivity? I'm going to Alex first as a user of his mobile app.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Salesforce, our #1 value is trust and privacy. So it's not necessarily drawing a line, and we actually think that there's no finish line when it comes to security and privacy of our customers. We deal in the enterprise. And so it's about what can you do in this new mobile world, in a world where people are bringing their own devices to work, to ensure that you're securing that data, but still giving them the opportunity to be productive, to collaborate, to engage. But I will tell you that we will always be over-biased in security of data.
Sam, what's your take on it?
I'm I'm not focused on it now, but I can tell you that, I think people's, from a user experience perspective, if you take away the enterprise requirements around privacy a bit and just look at how people are used to accessing, single sign-on kind of experiences like authenticating through Facebook in the consumer space, I think they're going to be looking for a super simple enterprise solution where they can just have that same kind of experience at work, and then, I mean, that's the same kind of map that most of this is going to have to take.
Yeah. I've heard some people say that if you use a native application, the data, of course, in many cases is resident on the device itself. So therefore, it makes it easier if the device is lost or stolen or hacked to go access that proprietary data. So I've heard some folks make the argument that that is an argument for sort of scripted-based services where the data is more, there's some faults to the argument, but the argument is some of the data is more held cloud-side, where, quote, it is easier to secure this. Does that make any sense? Is that, a lot of you guys sound like you, for usability reasons, understandably, got out of for native experiences, more performant, fast response time, cached experiences. Is that a relevant debate? Do you think about the architecture as it relates to the security topic?
I don't think it's super relevant. You can make the same experience in a native app so that it doesn't cache data to the same extent and so on. So you can get that same experience. But I think also with native app, it can become a lot easier to kind of monitor exactly what apps have been activated on what devices. And in our case, you can have like a back-end module to deprovision mobile devices if you don't want to let them have access to your application anymore. So. No, I don't think that's an argument at all.
Okay. This is a drive sales, so it's probably not what state of this topic too.
Rich, at least in the way we look at it, I think, as we've spoken to various different companies, I think we've converged in the same thinking, which is there are two different axes here. There's the end user, who really doesn't necessarily, they may not care as much about security, right? Provided all their data is, encrypted, stored safely, etc. And then you've got enterprise IT, the IT admin, who has a completely different set of requirements around compliance, security, policy, etc. So as an app developer, when we think about it, we say, there are maybe three things we have to worry about. First is keeping experience first and foremost, right? We always want to make sure that the end user experience doesn't get compromised. But if there's a second customer, which is enterprise IT, how do you provide them the tools? Right? So whether it's integration with MDM, MAM for the mobile application management, whether it is single sign-on, so a lot of identity management issues that have to be dealt with. And then finally, kind of what I would call application data management, right? Which is where do we store our data? Is there a way to kind of store it in the cloud? Do we store it locally? But that control needs to be given to IT because they will enforce policies, which they might say that a person A cannot connect to so-and-so storage provider, or the data cannot be stored on the iPad because that's not a trusted device. So at least, again, to summarize, it's very much about the device management, identity management, and then policy management.
I want to come to an Android versus Apple question, although it's not versus, so it's, the market's expanding, both are growing. But we've all seen the statistics, whether it's on VentureBeat or other places, of how, from a unit ship perspective, Android's growing quite rapidly. iOS continues to grow, but not quite as rapidly, depending on what data set you're looking at. I'm curious, question one, how does that look in terms of your user bases? How much is sort of iOS-based versus Android or other? And then my second follow-on to that, if I can just answer it however you choose, is it true that Android seems more flexible to work with? Does that affect how the way you think about prioritization versus, say, iOS? Maybe you guys can take a shot at it.
Yes, yeah, so I have some recent data. I just pulled some data before we went over here. Every month we have 25,000 new devices activated for our service. That means people using the application on the back office side. Every month we have 25,000 new devices activated. In the last quarter, it was the first quarter where Android was bigger than the iOS platform. So
just this last quarter?
Yeah, so that was 57% of all new devices were Android, 43% were iOS, meaning iPhones and iPads. 0.2% was BlackBerry and Windows. Sorry about that. So overall, overall of current active handsets on our platform, we have 63% on iOS, and that is iPhones and iPads, and 35% on Android. But Android is actually growing a lot faster. And we can also see that in terms of usage, it's about the same numbers as we heard before. It's 40% for, it's 60% for consuming, and 40% for actually updating and writing the application.
Thank you. As you guys follow up, in addition to whether the numbers are similar, if you could speak to that second question about how flexible and easy is Apple to work with versus how flexible and easy is, say, Android to work with in your types of applications.
Can I take that one?
Sure. So at least from a percentage perspective, for us, it's nearly all iOS. It's about close to 95+% is iOS. About 80% tablets, 20% phones. But as we've always believed ubiquity is an important requirement for what we are trying to do. And so even though Android is a small percentage for us, we do invest quite heavily on the Android side, and the fragmentation is a bitch. The fragmentation of the OS itself, the proliferation of various different devices, form factors, screen resolutions, causes a big problem.
So this is a point worth pausing on, which has always been an issue in the mobile industry. Is it the ice cream sandwich versus gingerbread release issues of different Android flavors?